Okay, so after doing builds for a while, I think I had returned to animating characters, and I kind of bounced between the two departments. Then came an opportunity where they moved me to the editing department. Now, this was the final editing, and part of the job was doing quality control, or QC for short. I think they wanted to try something a little different, where the person doing the final editing and the QC, if the issues were small enough, they'd be able to open a scene and fix it, right? And just throw it back into editing just to save some time from it going back to the animator and, through the supervisor and then back to the editor. The idea wasn't terrible, but the volume of work was a lot for one person to handle. So I think it was worth trying, and I'm glad I was the guinea pig for that little experiment. But I enjoyed expanding my skill set. With my own animation and as a revisionist, I was already doing a bit of QC anyways. Like I was QCing my own scenes, whatever scenes I touched. And so this was kind of leveling it up a bit just to find the issues, to weed out the issues across a whole episode. And through QC and editing, final editing, I'll just call it final editing from now. I learned not only video editing, but also how to multitask and juggle different episodes at different stages. Because I was the end of the line, I was also responsible for like the final output after compositing and all that and sending that to the client or the audio guys to finalize, all that fun stuff. So I had to juggle episodes that we were working on and then episodes that the client had seen and reviewed along with those notes. And basically every scene coming in, making sure the revisions were done, cutting them in, working with the director, cutting the show to length and all that. Now, one thing that happened was, especially at the beginning of a project, was things were a bit slow. There were days I'd come in and I'd have nothing to do because no scenes had been submitted yet. So I kind of felt bad, like I'm sitting here, I'm being paid, nothing to do. I had a chat with the studio coordinator about this, like, should I even come in? Like, what's going on? And he explained to me, like, this is normal. It's normal for things to be slow, and then you'll have a crap load of work come in and you got to deal with that. And so what happens is it kind of balances out. That being said, if I was going to be paid while I had no work, I was at least going to try to find a way for it to pay off for the studio. And so what I started doing in those hours and days where I had little work, I started watching compositing tutorials, After Effects specifically. I didn't have the program to play around with, but I'd just be watching these videos, and that's one of the things with me. I'm a very fast learner, especially if it's visual. Like through videos, I learn very, very well. The Adobe website at the time had an education section on their website, and so I'd just be watching videos there. And Video Copilot was one of the other websites where I went. This was before YouTube, mind you. And so I just learned everything I could, and I got really interested in compositing. That being said, I didn't get to apply that knowledge, at least not immediately. But I felt that at least continuing my education was a better way to use the time that I was paid for than to just sit there and do nothing. And so I would encourage anyone who finds themselves in a similar situation like that, I encourage you to go and keep learning. And especially for people who are paid salary or an hourly rate, something to keep in mind, every studio is a business and is run like one. And when you think of that from like the owner's perspective or the accounting department's perspective, I don't want to say that all studios treat their employees like numbers, but in a way, what they have to do is look at what they're paying and what they're getting in return. The term is return on investment, ROI. The reason why I mention that is through the years working with the studios, there were times where, projects came and went, and so people got laid off and That's just the nature of the industry. In and out of this industry, a lot of people look or want job security. Job security is an illusion, but my experience has been that job security is directly proportionate to the value you bring to the marketplace. I'll repeat that. Your job security in any industry is directly proportional to the value you bring to the market. And so if you find ways to increase the ROI, if you find ways to be valuable to a company, there's no guarantee, but you are more likely to be kept on the team. You are less likely to be cut or let go. Anyways, so eventually I went back to working in the builds department on another project, and things were happening not so much in the industry, but with not our client directly, but the investors, the people who were putting up the money for the project. I think they went bankrupt or something. So the investor had no choice. They pulled out. There was no money while we were working on this project. And the client that we were working with, basically they did everything they could to keep the project going. I think it was something that was kind of dear to them. Didn't work out. We were in full swing on this production, and then the rug got pulled out from under us. So things happen. Life happens. Crap happens. Put it the way you want. There are a lot of factors, a lot of variables over which we have no control. And we just kind of have to accept that. Bad things will happen, and all we can do is keep moving forward to the best of our ability with whatever we have. So for whatever reason in this industry, contracts come and go. And if you're lucky enough, you can find permanent employment with a studio or an employer of some kind. And it's very helpful to understand that just because you have work today doesn't mean the work will be there tomorrow. Jumping back a little bit to my college years, I remember we had done a field trip to visit some of the studios. There was a studio, we had gotten the tour, and of course, at the end, they asked, does anyone have any questions? Now, when you're new to the industry or have no experience in it, you don't know what to ask, right? And so one of my teachers, basically, because everyone was being quiet, asked the question. If ever you don't know what to ask, this is a great question. Great question. Remember this. What advice do you have for anyone that wants to break in or someone just starting out? And the tour guide was blunt. Save your money. You never know when your next contract is going to come up. There's no such thing as job security. You can do what you can to provide value so that people want to keep you on. But there's never any guarantee. So be prepared for downtime. That's basically all we can say. Just know it's nice to have a soft place to fall.